Brian, I have this distant memory of a fourth new state that's not New York, New Hampshire, New Mexico.
I don't know about that one.
What would it possibly be?
Not sure what you're talking about.
No,
it's called Nebraska, not Newbraska.
Right.
I mean, maybe that's it. I have this memory of standing by this pool with some ducks, and I can't really shake it, you know?
Yeah, I can't speak to what that might have been.
I mean, I woke up this morning, I got myself a gun.
Yeah.
My mama always told me I'd be the chosen one.
Oh.
I don't know what.
Is this a song? I don't know what you're
Star Wars
referencing.
No,
Okay, cool.
So many possible worlds, but we got this one. So many possible worlds, but we got this one.
Welcome to the worst of all possible worlds, the first and only podcast unafraid to stick its fingers into Jesus's wet holes. I'm the worst of all possible Brians.
I'm the worst of all possible AJs.
I am going to hell. I'm the worst of all possible Joshes.
And today we're going to talk
goodness.
about the fuckability of Jesus Christ.
That's right, folks.
But not of his voice actor.
Not of his voice. That voice actor, oh boy.
So bad.
We'll get there. But for those of you who have not listened to the show before, we are the worst of all possible worlds. And basically what we do is we examine pop culture from all of the angles. We figure out why it sucks. And we also imagine what would it be like in a world that didn't suck. And one of the things that we like to do on this show in a semi-regular recurring series is to talk about Adventures in Odyssey. That's right. This is a children's radio show that really peaked in the 90s, created by Focus on the Family, the Evangelical Christian conservative organization located in Colorado Springs, Colorado, 80995.
This is, of course, before they're in Colorado Springs, Colorado, but who gives a shit? That's what they're known for.
Yeah, that's right, because at this point in the episodes, they don't have, that's the very famous tag, AJ.
Yeah, they're still in California. I think they get to Colorado Springs in the early 90s, and there are some interesting news stories that come out of the construction of that site that we will definitely get into when we get to that point in time.
So I, the worst of all possible ages, have never actually, did not grow up with this show. So we've been sort of working our way through it, and I have been listening to it for the very first time. And it has been a journey through the 9 circles of hell for me. And I think it was very interesting after 2 weeks listening to these episodes, because it was amazing how quickly, after hearing John Whitaker's voice, that a white-hot rage spread throughout every fiber of my being.
This episode, we are going through 5 episodes here, and this first section is a 2-parter called The Imagination Station, which is a new invention by John Avery Whitaker, or Whit, the proprietor of Whit's End, as we know him, and And the Imagination Station comes from the writers wanting to do something where like a kid gets embedded into a historical story or a Bible story. And they played around with this a couple times. The first episode that they did this with was one about the American Revolution, where a kid's like, I have to do a project about the American Revolution. And he goes to the library and then he gets hit on the head by a book.
Good.
Suffers severe brain trauma, but then ends up like seeing the Declaration of Independence get signed.
Isn't that the plot of Dave the Tentacle?
Is that the plot of Dave?
No. But you do go back to the Revolutionary War times.
Oh, that's
you
funny.
invent the
and
hoagie.
And Bernard does hit his head on the grandfather clock when he's going down into the room. So I'm just saying there's some commonalities.
And there's this whole bit when he does in the Revolutionary War episode where the kid just responds to everything with, oh, wow. And all of the founding fathers are like, oh, wow. Is this some kind of Indian saying?
Oh, no.
Wow. I mean, obviously they learned from their mistakes a little bit, because at least this episode seems a little more.
Then Whit decided to introduce the environment enhancer, which was just Whit telling someone a story as they sat on a stool in the corner of the Bible room with a pair of headphones on. And then they imagined themselves in the world of the one episode where they use this is Connie gets to see David and Goliath happen. So then they're like, this sucks. So we're going to make a whole like big science fiction-y device that actually does the job.
I would like to ask a very pressing question. Did Whit invent 4DX? Is that what you're saying? At various points during the Bible story, did he punch Connie in the back of the head?
You're asking if Whit donkey punched Connie?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying, AJ?
Yes. It is what I'm saying, because that was my experience watching Valerian in the City of a Thousand Planets in 4DX after being sprayed in the face with what I was told was not water. They never clarified what it was, but it was not water legally.
Nice. Well, so and then did the Room of Consequences come about before this as well?
Room of Consequences comes later. And then the transmogrifier comes later. Right. They're all the same invention. We'll see that later. They're all the exact same thing. They're all just some kind of AI-driven simulator that Whit makes. It's just that the imagination station goes into the past.
Why not just steal the TARDIS idea? Like, why not just combine all of these things?
Actually, AJ, this is a good question. I'm just wondering, what do you think the imagination station looks like?
So in my head, it's kind of like a sweat lodge. It's like a little tiny igloo thing that's just made of metal. Like it would like go over your head. It's like a giant colander. Is that the thing you
colander?
Colander. You know that from my folksy southern upbringing. It's a colander.
No, that's how they say it down there. That's for sure.
That is
dripping
100%.
water out of there like a damn colander. I'm excited to tell you because I discovered this later too because I always thought it was a box.
Yeah, what does it look like? I don't think I know what it looks like.
It looks like a rocket ship.
Oh.
What?
It looks like a little tiny rocket ship with 2 seats in the front for some reason. Who knows why it's a rocket ship? That doesn't make any sense, but it looks like a rocket ship.
Especially because it goes into the past. You'd think you'd want to blend it in a little more.
And so as we're introduced to this ship, Tom Riley, who teaches Sunday school.
Which was a revelation to me.
I mean,
what a terrible idea.
Tom Riley teaching Sunday?
Yeah.
I'd rather Tom Riley be teaching Sunday school than fucking Whit.
That's true. I mean, at least Tom won't beat the kids.
Right.
And so Tom comes to Whit and he says, this kid who for some reason is named Digger Digwillow. And you definitely hear that as a different word. We're
gonna refer to him as D from here on out.
D,
that's
which he also refers
decision.
to himself as another episode.
Yeah, we're just gonna call him D.
Can we also say Triple D because his middle name is technically Dig, so his full name is.
No, that's a joke.
No, you just missed a very bad joke.
That's a quote unquote joke. He says his first name twice, and so somebody's like, "Your name is that." No, we can call him Double D,
like Ed and Eddie. Hey guys. I met the Savior.
Absolutely.
And he gave me a jawbreaker. So yeah, D, he sucks. He's really bad in Sunday
real bad
school.
Kid.
Bad kid.
He doesn't study his Bible. He's apparently never heard of Jerusalem before.
He's also never really heard of Jesus, but for some reason does know about a number of other Bible stories. Very confusing.
He doesn't know Jesus comes back?
That's like the famous twist. Basically, yeah, Tom's student, this kid Double D, is antsy because he doesn't love the Bible like the other kids do, and Whit wants to get kids to use their imagination a little more. So Whit coaxes the kid in the Bible room and is like, "Hey kid, you want to try out my new invention?" He's like, "What is it? Is it
candy?
What is it? Is it comic books?
You got any comic books here?"
Shut up, you stupid kid. But anything can happen in the imagination station, and so the idea of the imagination station, as Whit describes it, is that it is a way to encourage children to use their imaginations. But for me, that never really tracked because as we pretty soon see, Double D hops into the imagination station, is like, "This is stupid, Mr. Whittaker." And then
Whit is like,
"There, it's programmed. Now, climb in. Sit down."
It won't do any good, Mr. Whittaker. This stuff puts me to sleep.
I don't think so. By the way, just let me know if it gets to be too much for you, and I'll turn everything off.
Too much for me? I don't think so.
Well, I'm going to close the door now, and you push that red button when you're ready to start. Oh, and Digger.
Yeah.
Hold on tight.
Hold on tight? I don't think I'll need to hold on. Hello? Mr. Whittaker?
Push the red button, Digger.
You mean this one?
It sounds real bad.
It sounds so bad.
It's not good.
One speed.
And that's the other thing. They always go, whoa, in the imagination station, when it does a thing.
And this becomes a regular trope.
Right.
Whit tells them, push the red button. They push the red button. It goes wee wee wee, and they go whoa.
Right, because they're being transported every time. Every time. And once Double D opens up the door, lo and behold, he's out in the desert, and fortunately everybody there speaks English, which is a real coup.
But he still thinks he's in a room. Is the other thing, because he doesn't look up and see the sky.
This kid is fucking stupid.
He doesn't know anything about the Bible, but he's like, why are guys wearing robes? This looks like Ben-Hur, a movie that famously is about Jesus Christ in the Bible.
Insane.
Which actually takes a sort of a similar trajectory to his journey through the Bible.
Yes, there's definitely the imagination station then again is described as this place in this way to help children use their imaginations, but clearly as presented, it is an immersive VR experience. It's not like you want
no
kids,
imagination.
No, you want kids to use their imagination. Tell them to read a fucking book.
Yeah.
The imagination station is a VR experience, and
I would say it's a trauma experience.
If you're telling kids to use the imagination station, and remember the environment enhancer was just a pair of headphones, this is a stand-in for Adventures in Odyssey.
Right.
Double D is the kid who doesn't like the Bible but will listen to the Focus on the Family radio drama.
Well, the funny thing is that there is a part where he literally says, "My parents make me listen to books on tape."
Yep.
It's like, come on.
And I mean, what's interesting about, I think it became very clear in this episode, but Whit has a very particular strategy when dealing with people, like to convert them to Christianity or make them true believers, which is that he always starts out with people who are already halfway there. He's like, well, what do you think of the Bible, Double D? And he says, well, I don't know. It's all right, I guess. And that's where kind of everyone has that baseline. They have to acknowledge that it is good, but it's just like not their thing.
Right.
It's just
and
that
then
they don't want to
them.
read about how Zerubbabel begat Zerubbabel and Zerubbabel begat Zerubbabel Jr.
Right. So it's up to
and
Whit.
The Hittites brought offerings of sheep and goats to the Amalekites and blah, blah, blah.
Right. And so it's up to Whit to put them into the re-education silo and shake it violently and scream, your friend is dead, your friend is dead, they killed your friend is dead, until they come out weeping. And he's like, don't worry, your friend's actually not dead. He came back at the end, even though, and we'll get to this a little later, it has never been clearer to me that somebody just stole Jesus's body from the tomb.
Yes.
Never has it been clearer that nothing miraculous took place.
This introduces one thing that better imagination stations make more hay of, which is it decides to take a side character, in this case, the people who own the house that the Last Supper takes place in, and expands them.
Yeah.
And lets you in on the way that they live their lives, the rituals that they have, and the confusions that they have when they meet someone with blue jeans, as this clip will show.
Yeah.
I am John Mark. Who are you?
Digger. Digger Digwillow.
Digger Digwillow.
There's that dumb joke.
A strange name to match
See, that's just the oh wow thing over again.
your strange clothing. Is this a new material?
It's not new. They're jeans.
From Rome?
No, from Levi's. Levi Strauss.
Ah, a Jewish tailor. I should have guessed. Fine craftsmanship.
It's a funny joke, but the way he says it is just, it feels a little gross.
It feels anti-Semitic, doesn't it?
It really does, but I don't know how. All the words seem fine, but the delivery of fine craftsmanship, if you know what I mean. And I'm like, I don't know what you mean. What are you talking about, John
He
Mark?
is a Judean nationalist under occupation from Rome.
Yeah.
Which in another episode may have been massaged a little bit better, because right now he's just a guy.
And also, like, the interesting thing, too, that you were saying, Brian, about the way that they will take these side characters and sort of bring them to the fore. Obviously, the nice thing about that as a writer is that it lets you put in details that are not part of the historical record or the biblical record or what have you. The problem with this episode, though, well, both of these episodes, because it's a two-parter, is that it's not willing to fill in any of those gaps because it's, the story of Jesus. And to fill it in a little bit too much would be taking too many creative liberties with the source material and would verge on sacrilegious, at least for, from their perspective, from the writer's perspective. So this episode honestly ends up being pretty boring because what ends up happening is, Double D now ends up at this house. It turns out that this is the house where the Last Supper is.
We do a 3-day time jump for some reason.
There's a 3-day time jump. He gets to briefly witness the Last Supper. He sees Judas, walking out. For some reason, he still thinks it's a dream because he's fucking stupid.
Well, and because Whit has not explained anything to him at all.
Fair.
Whit is just like, get in this big mysterious box that I
when
just
made. When a strange
made.
man that you just met says, get in the box, you get in the box.
So he gets in the box and he's like, push the button. He's like, I don't know what the button does. And he's like, just wait. You'll be terrified.
Right.
And now this kid is surrounded by people that he thinks are real. Right. This isn't like a VR headset. This is like beaming straight into his brain, like actual images of human beings. And he's just like, what's going on?
Right.
And sometimes Whit like turns the simulation off and he's just in this dark void for a few minutes.
Yeah.
Which is not the first time the Imagination Station will put someone in a dark, endless void.
It really is, as a device, as a writing device, the Imagination Station is the holodeck from Star Trek.
Right.
The only difference, of course, is that when you do an adventure on the holodeck in Star Trek, you know that you're on the holodeck. Yeah. Whereas this kid, he knows that he's inside the Imagination Station, but you're right, he doesn't know what it is that it's going to do. And this happens, if I recall correctly, a few times where kids cannot differentiate between what is real and what is simply happening in the world of the Imagination Station. And it's not as if there is a failsafe that exists beyond, I guess, calling out for Mr. Whittaker.
Yeah.
But he actually kind of does say, hey, Mr. Whittaker, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, but nothing happens.
Yeah, it's just like, don't worry, we're going to throw you in a dungeon now.
Well, it's just consent is all over the fucking place on this thing. He just says, Mr. Whittaker, I want to stop. And Mr. Whittaker doesn't actually, for the first whole Palm Sunday bit, he's not responding at all.
He's like, what are you, a pussy?
Yeah. Go stay in there and like it.
Like, he could have told this kid, you're going to live out a Bible story in just a couple of minutes.
You're right. I was too judgmental of Double D, looking at it from the outside perspective.
I can't blame you, though. He sucks.
He sucks, though.
He's
really
almost
suck.
just so
Who's
irritating.
worse, Double D or Monty?
They're the same. They're the same thing.
They exist in sort of the same realm. I like Monty because he at least was able to fight back and wreck Whit shit a little bit, which I was really appreciative of.
He at least had the cojones to smash the window. Yeah,
and
I
Monty
agree.
is like traumatized. Double D just kind of sucks.
Yeah, you're right. Okay. It's a clear win for Double D.
Although he's going to come out of this with probably equal levels of trauma to
You're not
Monty
wrong.
Whittaker.
But that's what Whit does. He traumatizes people.
He what?
We see Judas leave. Although another thing that's interesting is that
he scurries out.
He clocks it. Double D clocks it. He's like, wait a minute, the Garden of Gethsemane. So for some reason he knows about that, and he knows about a number of other things, but he doesn't know that Jesus comes back at the end.
Yeah.
Confusing.
How did they keep this from him?
Very strange.
Did he just black out midway through every single religious meeting? I recall the Mass in Catholicism. I don't know what Protestants call church. Okay, great.
We get a peek in, and this is very much following the Ben-Hur style of don't show the face of Jesus or anything like that.
Right.
But instead it's like, well, we have to have Jesus talking.
Do you have a clip?
He's just going to quote the scripture, and he's going to be the dullest, most boring.
Even if all fall away on account of you, I will never fall away. I'm ready to go with you to prison, to the death.
I tell you, Peter, today, yes, even tonight, before the rooster crows twice, you will deny that you even knew me 3 times.
It's like, I don't know if you guys have seen this episode of the Venture Brothers, but there's the nozzle.
Moving will disrupt calibration of the nozzle. Please wait while we calibrate the nozzle. Please do not look away from the nozzle.
Peter, I tell you that before the cock crows, you will have denied me 3 times.
Take
I
this
can
bread
do
and
the
eat
rest of
from
the
it.
podcast episode like this.
This is my body, which will be given for you.
It's like, wow, such charisma. That voice actor, by the way, is Dave Arnold.
Like the one they mention in the credits all the time?
Yeah, Dave Arnold is executive producer, one of the co-creators. He's directed hundreds of episodes.
Wow.
He has written hundreds of episodes. He directed this one. I don't remember if he wrote this one. I think this might have been Paul McCusker at a low point. And Dave Arnold is also an executive at Focus on the Family.
Oh.
I'm just driving Dave Arnold's name home because
yes, I
down
know.
the
I know
line,
where this
Dave
is going.
Arnold is
That's
actually
right.
going to be
Yep.
someone that we're going to talk about quite a bit.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I briefly thought that it was Kevin Sorbo playing Jesus, and that's not completely out of the realm of possibility. But
Yeah, I don't think that they have gotten him to do the show in recent years. Even though they could get Christy Swanson and Ray Wise.
They can get all of those freaks.
Yeah.
Well, you know what's really interesting though.
Dean Cain.
This is really cool. I did look this up because it was sort of bothering me. I looked up the voice of Peter. Did you guys know this? That is actor Ray Liotta.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. He didn't sound nearly as gruff and nonagenarian as he did in our commercial recently.
Well,
I
there
know.
you go.
That was a good get, by the way, Brian. How did you book him?
He used to hang around a bathhouse that I frequented.
So moving on to part 2.
We're going to be sued for libel. This
we
is
hear
terrible.
that little bit. We hear about, Peter says, no, Jesus, I would never deny you. Like, we know where this is going, right?
And Jesus says, yes, you will. You will deny me.
And then actually what happens is Double D mouths off to Pilate directly. And is like, you
and doesn't get
idiot.
executed.
No.
And so Whit decides to throw him into a rat-infested prison.
Right. He gets seized. He gets sent to the dungeon. And then a centurion who is down there keeping watch over him.
Yeah.
Double D's in a cell with another guy. And centurion comes.
And I have a clip of that because this is probably the only good part of this episode is the voice actor who's playing that other guy.
Barabbas.
You're the youngest prisoner I've seen.
Spoiler.
Almost as young as I when I started.
He's chomping down on a loaf of bread.
You're smarting off to Pilate?
Smarting off?
Yeah, being rude.
Good boy, you have spunk. You know why I'm in here?
No, why?
Murder. I kill rude little boys.
It's so good.
He's having so much fun. He's
I
having
love that he
fucking
doesn't
good.
know the phrase smarting off, but he knows spunk.
In general, the quality of the voice acting in Adventures in Odyssey will continue to improve over the course of the show. But that is a really great example of a guy who had 2 lines and was like, fuck it, I'm going for it. And this episode is so much the better for it.
Yeah.
I'm a little sad that it was the centurion that ultimately takes Double D to the mount to see Jesus crucified, and that it wasn't like Barabbas and him going on a buddy cop adventure.
Part of the reason that the centurion needed to be the one to take him up to Golgotha, of course, is that in the Bible, there's the payoff at the end of the crucifixion where there was a Roman centurion standing nearby who saw it happen and said, surely this is the Son of God, which of course is the payoff for that whole setup. Anyway.
I do also find it interesting, whenever someone does a passion play, which this is a very dry kind of passion play, there's always the question of what you're going to do with Pilate, right? So are you going to include the one story where he goes to Herod afterwards and then gets, flipped around? They don't include the Herod part. And I feel like most Protestant tellings don't include the Herod part, which I think is only in one of the 4 Gospels.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. But yeah, when I think I wasn't, because I didn't grow up listening to Jesus Christ Superstar, but the first time I was even aware of the Herod part was when I saw The Passion of the Christ.
Oh, interesting.
Which is, of course, very Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
In Christian tradition, there has always been a couple of different ways of portraying Pilate, to the point where in the Eastern Church, Pilate is a saint. He is granted sainthood in the Ethiopian, the Egyptian Coptic, and the Greek Orthodox churches.
I didn't know that.
Where they have created a whole mythical life of Pilate that happens after the death of Christ, where he converts to Christianity and all of this stuff. There's a lot of argument. There's a lot of Gnostic and apocryphal gospels and other texts about Pilate in the later years where he goes to Syria or whatever.
Right.
There are a lot of questions about it being an attempt to villainize the Jewish people, make it so Pilate, when he washes his hands, is actually innocent, and the Jewish people are therefore to be cursed for killing Jesus.
Which I would argue is actually kind of the tack that this episode takes.
I still think it portrays Pilate as a weasel and a coward.
Yeah, a little bit.
And not necessarily that he was a coward to the crowd, but more that he just didn't give a shit.
Right.
I like that Claudia had her moment of just, them saying, well, it says God wills it. She's like, God didn't have anything to do with this. I convinced my husband to do this shit. This has nothing to do with you. And I'm like, yeah, honestly, tell him, Claudia.
She's just holding up her tits. You think God had anything to do with this?
I always feel a little detached from passion plays or whatever, because it's actually, I think, the least interesting part of Jesus's life.
Yeah, 100%.
It's because Jesus has no agency in any of this, really. He's dragged from place to place to place.
And when you're telling something from an unquestioning Christian perspective, the question, like with Pilate and his sanctification, or it's like there's this question, who's at fault? Who committed sin? What was the mistake that they made? And this gets litigated in sermons and things like that. And as a kid, I always thought that was so strange because it's like, God killed him. Like all of this stuff was set in motion on purpose because he was supposed to die. To give anyone, including Judas Iscariot, the fault for killing Jesus just doesn't make any sense at the end of the day, because we all killed him. That's the story. That's metaphysically the thing that happens, and that's what matters.
I will also say that Pontius Pilate choosing to send Double D to the dungeons as opposed to hurting him means that Pontius Pilate is officially less violent
than John Avery Whittaker. You're exactly right. That's fucking canon.
It also, at one point, the centurion says you can't stop the state execution. It'd be like trying to use a push broom against an ocean or whatever. And there was a brief moment where I was like, wait, so you believe that state executions are bad, right? Like, right? But then I remembered ACAB, all centurions are bastards.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Double D makes it to Golgotha, sees Jesus on the cross. Jesus breathes his last. Centurion says, truly is the Son of God. The heavens open up. There's a storm. The whole thing.
And the voice actor for Jesus is giving it his all in this moment. Like, he's really going for it. You feel Jesus' pain.
Yes. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why have you forsaken the nozzle?
And it really, you're right that it is like, it's the Ben-Hur thing, or the, Hail Caesar, I mean, it is that thing, right? They can't show it because the idea of
the feet,
I'm surprised they even gave him a voice at all, to be honest. Because it's like...
that was a discussion in the writers' room.
Absolutely it was.
Yeah, which is why all he says is scripture.
But it probably would have been really difficult to do the thing if all that Double D ever did was see him and not hear him, because it's an audio drama. Yeah. Like it would just otherwise it'd just be a lot of, and there were a few of these where he was
why
like,
they got their director in, and he's not recording at the same time. He's not like recording at the table with those guys. You can hear the way he's cut in and out is a little bit different.
There are a couple points at which he actually, when Double D describes what it is like to be seen by Jesus. And they could have just kept that if they'd really wanted to.
I think so much of this was just proof of concept that they didn't want to take it in a bold direction. There are later episodes, like the Tower of Babel episode is the one that comes to my mind more immediately, that take a lot of liberty, incorporate a lot of other historical things that we know about the region at the time and stuff like that. Makes it a lot more interesting. Well, this is like trying to toe the line between the story that they want to tell and then also telling the story of Jesus and then not knowing how to depict Jesus himself. So then we get to the point, Jesus has died, the earthquake happens, Double D is just left back in the void. He is fucking annihilated.
Yeah.
He is sobbing. He has been, like, he just watched this guy get, like, tortured and killed in front of him.
You might as well call him Lynn Nottage, because he is ruined.
He went into that space as a Doug Trio, and he's leaving it a Diglett.
That's what we should have been calling him the whole time. Diglett Doug Trio.
Yeah.
And so then he gets a little time jump again, 3 days later. And I thought this was so weird. They don't depict the tomb.
No, they just talk about it.
Step by step.
Yep.
Every little thing, and he just has to believe it, which I think brings us to where you were.
Look, the preposterousness of him not knowing that Jesus comes back aside, which is a huge ask for an audience to not know that.
Particularly considering that he already, again, earlier on, he knew about the betrayal at the Garden of Gethsemane.
He knew the name Gethsemane. He knew about Judas. Like he seemed to know very like key points of the story, and then other points is just like oblivious, which means I think he's narcoleptic and is just like clocking out midway through these Sunday schools.
Or maybe he only ever saw Godspell.
Oh, but Jesus comes back at the end of Godspell. We see a white light.
Not in the movie.
He can, but he doesn't have to.
Oh, I guess not in the movie.
It's not in the text.
Tom Riley is a terrible Sunday school teacher, is what I'm learning from all this. She's explaining that Mary Magdalene went up with the other Marys to like check on the tomb, and she talks about
they're like, hey, Jesus,
like anointing him with oils, and she says this very flippant sort of, it's a burial custom.
Yes,
as if like to qualify. I'm like, okay, now I'm questioning if it's an actual burial custom. I'm wondering what the fuck they're going up there for, but it's just like the body was gone and the thing was moved. And the guards weren't there anymore. And it was the first time, truly, I've heard this story countless times. This telling of it was the first time where I'm like, somebody stole that body.
Oh yeah.
Nothing miraculous happened here. That was a good old fashioned grave robbing.
And also it's like, oh, there was this big stone and they couldn't have put in the soldiers they fell asleep. It's like, no,
Instead
of course
of
not.
depicting any of it, it's so weird.
It's like there were a dozen guys, and you know what they did? They went and they blackjacked those centurions, and then they rolled the stone away and they took the body. Like that is obviously what happened based on hearing this telling of it. Being if you're in any way a naturally skeptical person.
Right.
Yeah.
And now we're kind of in Pentecost.
He shows up at the safe house, right?
Yeah.
So so we get the point where he shows up, they do the holes.
They sure
we get
do.
to the ending of Andras Vishki's Disciples.
That's a fucking
that joke is just for me
and me
the
also.
one Romanian listening to this.
It's for me, it's for you, it's for one random Romanian, and it's for Stephanie Sandberg.
There's an incredibly loud heartbeat playing in the background. They're all wearing coats with their names on them.
Oh my God.
Okay, I'm not gonna let this riff go any further.
Take it back.
It's a good play. I almost went with the Beckett joke, but I thought, no, we're gonna go. I'm putting my balls all the way in this hole.
I was gonna go with the Beckett joke, but I thought I'd go for the more accessible one.
Yes.
Yeah. The random Romanian playwright who Brian and I happened to have as a professor in college.
He's very good. Read his plays.
He is good.
Josefina Komporai, she has anyway. So Double D ends up back in the void, and now there is only the face and voice of the NOZZLE talking to him.
Mm-hmm. Digger dig willow.
Jesus.
Jesus, I believe in me, Digger. Believe.
And so, Diglett Doug Trio has been completely love bombed.
Yes.
Like, he has been shredded apart as a 7-year-old child. He has had everything that he understands ripped into little tiny pieces, and now he's been built back up, and he has this sudden conversion moment, and he turns to Christ.
And he says at one point, "What is this thing I'm feeling?" And Whit says, "Well, that's joy." And I'm like, this kid has never experienced joy before.
Well, that's not what he's feeling at all. Of course he's experienced joy before. He's a kid. Yeah. It's just that that's not what he's experiencing.
Well, no, I don't know if you ever heard this one, Josh. This one always came when Jerry Pipes would come by. He still is, this traveling preacher who tells the same 5 stories wherever he goes. He has one sermon and he just does it over and over again. And he always talks about the difference between happiness and joy, because happiness, you see, is when you feel good because of something that happens, which is not the etymology of that word.
No, there's
joy is only this feeling that you get as part of the he wouldn't use this word, but the ecstatic connection that you have to Christ.
There's a pretty memorable episode of Adventures in Odyssey about this, and we could listen to it later.
Count it all joy.
Absolutely. That's one of those really sticky ones that's still in my brain. I was talking to AJ before we actually started rolling about how starting to listen to some of this stuff again, I don't know about you, but it's like digging up some childhood trauma. The things that this show treats as being so normal and so just accept Jesus into your life, and you kid, you just got fucking traumatized over the course of a half hour and built back up again, and now you're feeling joy. Isn't that great? that's par for the course in the evangelical world.
That's true.
And I think that when I was a kid, the thing about the evangelical church and the way that it operates is that all of these traumas, all of these things that are so fucked are just sort of part of the background noise. They're just there. They just exist. And that constant proselytizing, that constant way of just like trying to break you down and build you back up, that's just part of what the thing is.
Well, that's why mission trips are such a big thing, right? It's not about the mission that they do. It's not about the house that they kind of repaint shittily, or like the foundation that they lay for some church,
or about the kids who they take pictures with.
It's not about that. It's about isolating the kids, getting them all together in a group, and having them experience psychologically this completely unique experience where they are, the term that we always used was on fire for the Lord.
Yep.
You know, you get them singing sometimes for hours.
Literal hours on end. Yep.
And it's not even like that's even a conscious thing. It's just that these music leaders are full of themselves and they're never going to make it in like a commercial career.
Also they literally and they can't actually like talk unless there's somebody like strumming an acoustic guitar behind them.
And it's like with mission trips were always the things where it's like, we would go on things with the Southern Baptist convention, right? So it would be other Southern Baptist church and kids were all like holding their hands up and their hands out. And it's like, we don't do that. That's not even, you're going to go back to church and everyone just stands there. And the only reason they have their hand up is because it's holding the hymnal. Right. But again, it's about like inducing this environment, breaking the person down to, and they think of it as just like you're breaking someone down to their soul. You're bringing someone to an actual revelation.
Right.
But of course, the joke always at all of these kinds of things is that you go home and it's gone. It's disappeared because it's the seed in the rocky soil. And then it blah, which is happening to my basil right now, and I'm struggling.
Yeah. You're describing a cult. You both are describing
it is cult-like in these particularly charismatic parts of the evangelical Christian movement. It is very cult-like.
So what I'll say about this first two-parter of Whit's magical re-education camp.
Whit's gulag.
Whit's gulag.
Magical mystery play tour.
Is that to say something sort of positive about it? I actually think that its approach to the Passion story as being kind of a Rosencrantz and Guildenstern outsiders looking on kind of thing, I don't think that's inherently a bad idea. I actually think it's probably one of the most interesting ways to approach any story about Jesus's final, week on Earth. I think that's pretty cool. That being said, what we've been talking about with religion as trauma, there's, I think, nothing that sums that up quite like these two episodes. That it is literally tearing this poor boy's skin off of his body to then be rebuilt as a soldier for the Christian army. It even ends with Whit being him being like, well, who do I tell? And he's like, well, tell your friends and tell your family. He's like, but what about after that? And he's like, well, then you tell the whole world. And it's like he's literally trained a Dalek to like go out and shoot a little plunger of Christianity at the human race, and and
we get to Chris at the end of the episode, and she says, well, now Double D has entered on this adventure where every minute is better than the last and it will go on forever. It's a paraphrase of the last lines of The Last Battle by C.S. Lewis.
Oh, sure.
So I had to bring that up because of where we're going later. Once we get to our break, we'll come back and we'll get to our next episode, which is about that Great Commission and what you do as a Christian living in an increasingly secular world. Hey, listeners, do you like books? Do you like candles? Do you like things being handpicked and delivered to you every month without having to leave your house? Do you like the feeling of a cool breeze on the back of your neck? Do you like watching football? Do you like surprises? Do you like fleece blankets? Do you like the smell of old oscilloscopes? Do you like listening to 90s Christian bands like Bleach, Skillet, or X-Toll? Do you like hiking? Do you like strolling through the park at least? Look, your mother told me what happened at school. I know the divorce has been hard on you, and right after losing your grandpa, we don't have to talk about it. We can just have some fun. Play a video game? I have Super Smash Bros. Do you like Super Smash Bros? Do you like shopping for hats? I know you don't like being here at the apartment. But this is the only time we have together for a while, buddy. I've got to go out to Massachusetts on assignment for the next couple weeks. Can't we just... Do you like ordering stamps online? Do you like podcasts about history, true crime, and the enduring legacy of the Magyar raid on Bavaria? Do you like paying less at your pharmacy for the same prescriptions? Do you like the sound of old-fashioned vinyl?
So many possible worlds, but we got this one.
Hey folks, that's it for the preview of this episode. Yes, there is more content. In the full-length episode, which you can find on our Patreon in the show notes, we talk about the evils of teaching children evolution and a very poorly made biblical metaphor that also sets the stage for the episodes of Odyssey that we're going to talk about next time in our very first guest episode. That's right, folks. We've got a real podcast now. So, I just wanted to thank you for listening. Please check out the Patreon if you can. And I want to thank our sponsors, which are not whatever that commercial was supposed to be for, but our patrons, who include Aeneas Hemphill, Ben Ferber, Benjamin R. Alford, Bill, Dominic Russo, Nate Netzley, Octavia Immersive, with a special thank you to Ashley Stoneman and Nikola Donov. All right. Stay safe out there, folks.